Hi, welcome to Maker's Bar. I'm Akshita Shetty, your host, and today we have Jonathan Rinaldi from New York City, from the Republican Party, representing District 29. He has graciously accepted to interview with us, and we are excited to hear about his journey and his story and how he is running for public office in New York City as a Republican. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hey, what's up? And it's Queens, New York City.
Queens. Okay. Okay. Perfect. All right. Sorry, my geography is not that good. So,
So good.
just to get started, and we always ask this, tell us a little bit about your background and what kind of motivated you to run for public office.
Yeah, I listen, when it comes to people living from Queens, they call it the world's borough. I'm a little bit of everything. My background in terms of just where I'm from, I grew up with every conceivable kind of person in the world. I'm, as down to earth as you can get. And I had children. They got older, and we all experienced COVID. And we all had different experiences during that time. And I looked at my kids one day as we were getting kicked out of a restaurant for not having our vaccine passports, and I looked at them and I said, I'm going to make a difference, and I was going to use this as a learning tool to teach my kids that anything is possible. My
Mhm.
children are mixed. My ex-wife is Haitian, so I wanted them to grow up to know that discrimination and racism is through an ideology. It's not based on skin color, religion, or race. It's an
Yeah.
ideological fight at this point. So I wanted them to understand that and be prepared to go out there in the world and not let people pigeonhole them and make them believe that they're any less than what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what would you describe your leadership style and how has it evolved over the years in your career and career before you ran for public office? How has that kind of evolved?
I think my leadership style is duty. And what I mean by duty, I mean that, we all have a responsibility to step
Yeah.
up for the health and welfare of our neighborhood, our country, and the future of our children.
Yeah.
Once you win public office, you take an oath. You
Yes.
take an oath to uphold the values of the country, of everything else. So it's really just duty. And I'm an administrative terrorist. And what I mean by that is, the administrative process is the ability to fill out forms and to put yourself in a position to be able to run for office,
Yeah.
right? Somebody once told me that petitions move mountains. And what
Mhm.
that means is that if you are able to get people to sign a document or a paper,
Yeah.
you can pretty much do anything that you'd like. So,
Okay.
it's not really anything other than a responsibility.
Yeah. So what does that mean? And I know you spoke about it before we started the interview as well. Could you explain this a little bit to our guests because a lot of them who are listening probably would want to run for public office someday and would resonate with your story. What does that actually mean? Like signing petitions? Yeah.
Yeah. So, in order to get on the ballot, right, you have to get a certain number of signatures. So you go and you make a form, and it says, "My name is
Mhm.
Jonathan Rinaldi, and I want to run for city council."
Yeah.
And you have to get 500 signatures in order to make it on the ballot. So you get a list of all the registered, Republicans or Democrats or whatever, and you knock on their doors and
Uh-huh.
you get them to sign a paper. And it's probably the worst thing you can ever do in your entire life. It's 1 month of going out every single day, rain, sleet, snow, sick, doesn't matter. You got to get up, you got to go out for 3 or 4 hours a day,
Uh-huh.
knock on strangers' door, and get kicked out of buildings and get the doors slammed in your face. But ultimately, if you hustle and you're out there and you work hard, you can get people to sign a paper, and you submit that to the Board of Elections, and you'll be on the ballot.
Wow, I actually didn't know this at all, personally. So, what are the key issues in your district and how do you plan to address them?
I think you know what we're up against is an ideology,
Hmm.
right? Like we are up against a system, a political system that is completely funded and run by special interests, not for profits that
Yeah.
write and make policy. So
Hmm.
everything that you see that's going on outside is because a not for profit or something like that went to a politician, donated money to them, and then made them write something and vote on something so that these things can get passed.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that's really what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And, they want to push us to a certain direction, right? They don't want anyone driving cars. They want us all to be on 100% electricity. Um, and unfortunately, in all of this kind of vision that they have for the future,
Hmm.
it's not complete. Like it doesn't have any infrastructure. Like they don't include any upgrades to the streets, to the schools, to the fire departments, to the energy, like the actual, you know, infrastructure, like the pipes and the wires and all that stuff that's supposed to support all of this. They don't have any of that included. And what ends up happening is that it's going to make it almost impossible and very expensive for
Hmm.
anyone to be able to own a home or to raise a family, because all of those costs are going to be put on us,
Hmm.
and that's the dirty little secret about what they're trying to do, is that they have this great vision of us being completely electric, which
Hmm.
has its dangers, by the way, but
Yeah.
they want us to pay for it. So, it's that's really what's going on in the city right now. And
Hmm.
in terms of policy and things like that, it's important to make sure that the local um, community boards, civic associations uh, remain and have the power to decide what goes on in their own neighborhoods.
Got it. So let me ask you this. You spoke about the funding a little bit, right? And fund and how, funding is done based on political interests and business interests and things of that nature. But even to run for a candidate, right, you do need certain amount of money, right? And if you kind of, don't take some of these funding, you will not be able to run as well. So how are you kind of balancing that as you are running your campaign?
Well, that's actually not true, you see,
Okay.
because, and I'll explain it to you. So,
Yeah.
what happens is they have what's called the matching funds program, right?
Hmm.
So, for every $1 you raise,
Hmm.
the city will give you $8. So
Okay.
you basically are trying to raise $20,000 to $40,000 so
Yeah.
that you can get $220,000 to run
Yeah.
for office, right?
Yeah.
But what happens is that there's all of these people that offer services,
Hmm.
phone banking, door knocking. Like, so what ends up happening is that it just creates a business to where these companies know that you are raising money for them to come and drain you of all that money. See, so
Okay.
you don't actually need any money. You just have to know how to get signatures. The problem is that for somebody that wants to run for office, to go and knock on doors and do all of those things, it's not something that a normal person can either do or handle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they will have to pay for that, right?
Yeah.
And that's, it costs about, I don't know, there's people that charge about $10 to $15 a signature when you get ripped off, but you can
Yeah.
basically pay $2 to $3 a signature. So imagine just to get in office or to get on the ballot, it's an expense. And then um, the old way of doing things is to send out mailers, right?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
real reason for raising all of this money is so that you can send mail, like you for the elderly and things like that. They like mail, so you'll send 3 to 5 pieces of mail, but to send it to all the whole district is going to cost you $80,000 to $150,000. So you can imagine what you really need the money for. I have a different way of doing things because I refuse to take any money
Hmm.
from any special interests.
Hmm.
And so I'm forced to do things a little bit unorthodox. So
Yeah.
you don't need money, but you should. And then if you don't raise money, then the establishment doesn't look at you as a viable real candidate because they don't get anything in their pocket, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally know what you mean, actually. So, I have to ask this question. Where did you get this resilience from to do this? Like, not a lot of people have this resilience. This is extraordinary. So, where did you get that? I mean, was it your childhood, or where did you get it from?
I mean, I would just say that I grew up in the '90s in Queens.
Okay.
So we're just a different breed, but I think just you know learning about what happened to the world in Eastern Europe, specifically in World War II,
Yeah,
uh, and how what happens when individuals don't stand up
yeah,
to and so when I saw what was happening during COVID, when I saw like the government overreach
yeah,
and things like that, I was people don't realize that we were really like this close from being rounded up like and taken
yeah,
away to
yeah,
camps. Like
yeah,
I know it's like a little out there, but I was there. I mean, I know how people were,
yeah,
and there was a lot of misinformation, a lot of just stuff that didn't make any sense. But the
yeah.
people seemed to just go along to get along, and I wasn't one of those people. So I wanted to make sure that my kids, when they grew up, they understood um, what really was going on.
Yeah. So we briefly touched on technology earlier. So tell me, how do you plan to integrate technology in within and innovation within your policies?
Well, look, I'm a big believer in certain things should be free, right?
Hmm.
And I'm not saying everything should be free. I'm saying certain things should be free.
Hmm.
For example, internet, public transportation.
Hmm.
When you talk about technology and you talk about stuff like that, in order for business to move in the city, you have to provide the people the ability to move in the city, right? So, for the younger generation that is going to grow up where AI is basically going to control everything,
Yeah, yeah,
you got to offer the families, the people that are living the working class. You have to give them a little bit of relief. So, if you can
mm,
offer people like free internet access, if you can offer them free public transportation, um, you know,
yeah,
they'll be able to move around and operate a whole lot more freely and give them the ability to kind of take some risk,
yeah.
So
Agree.
um, just keep things accessible,
Hmm.
for the most part.
Yeah. So Queens is a very diverse community. So how do you plan to engage and represent this diverse community? And obviously, as you said, you're raised in Queens, you probably are very diverse. So just curious, like, what is your approach towards this?
It's tough because number one, I mean, I'm running as a Republican, so even speaking to a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll just immediately go to the federal government, they'll immediately go to Trump, and they'll just start going off on tangents. When I try to explain to them that what we're dealing with is local. What happens on the federal level doesn't affect your schools, your streets, things
Yes.
like that. And when it comes to like diversity and things like that, we're really not that different. We all live in the same neighborhood. We all eat at the same
Yeah.
restaurants. We all take the same transportation. So we all have the same experiences.
Yeah.
So it's really just about talking plainly to people because um, I think it was Herodotus, I'm not sure, but he said, it's a pebble in the shoe, right? So
Yeah.
people really only care about what's affecting them at
Yeah.
that particular time. So everybody knows that everything's too expensive. Everybody knows that eggs are $10.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that it's the summertime and the electric bill for running your AC is going to be ridiculous
Yeah.
because Con Ed already came to the community boards and said that they don't even have enough power or
Yeah.
infrastructure for
Wow.
everyone to cool their homes. So
Hmm.
they know and they can feel it.
Yeah.
And, they can only be lied to, but so many times.
Yeah. Agree. So, tell me a little bit about your economic policies and how that'll kind of benefit your district.
Right. So, I part of my district is Queens Boulevard, for argument's sake. And
Mhm.
again, it's speed cameras, it's a lot of different things that affect your pocket, right? If you have a lot of technology that's being used to like immediately remove money out of your account,
Yeah.
it's a big problem. Like for example, Easy Pass is
Mhm.
something that everybody needs to travel,
Yeah.
but Easy Pass is something that you can get billed for. Like you can
Yeah.
have an Easy Pass and go to Jersey. Right
Yeah.
now with congestion pricing, forget it. Like it's going to cost you $60-$70 just to drive to Jersey and come back.
Yeah.
And then if
Tell me a little bit about your economic policies and what your stance is and how would this affect your district?
Yeah, so in terms of economic policy, I just want to make sure that like the money stays within the family and the working class. And what I mean by that is, we have to get away from things like, too many speed cameras, too much tolls. Try to alleviate the cost of public transportation and internet and infrastructure. And like I was saying, there are things like on Queens Boulevard where I live, you can't pull over to run into the store because they'll give you a ticket within like 3 seconds. So the businesses are really affected by over aggressive ticketing,
Yeah.
and you have things that I always like to talk about, like Easy Pass. Like Easy Pass, for example, with congestion pricing, it costs $70 to $100 if you want to take your family from like Long Island to New Jersey and back.
Mhm.
And if you miss one of those tolls, you'll get like a bill in the mail, which you get $100 fine, $50 fine. And if you don't pay that, or if you don't know that you missed it, because all the other tolls are accepted, that goes into collections, that affects your credit. So I want to roll back a lot of the technocracy, a lot of the overarching fees that people are constantly getting hit with, because what this is a regressive tax.
Yeah.
So we have to just stop overtaxing the working class clandestinely without them even knowing it, and just keep the money in the pockets of the family so that they can spend it on in the restaurants and at the movies, and that's how we're going to get the economy moving again.
Yeah. So, what about healthcare? Like, what is your stance on it, or if you have any policies that you're thinking for your district in terms of your health, in terms of healthcare?
Well, I mean, listen, when you have children, right, it changes a lot of what you're able to do, and what you really think that you know or don't know, right? Because my daughter needed glasses, and my son gets sick sometimes, and this, that, and the other thing. And God forbid your child has a mental disorder, or some kind of learning disability or something like that. And things are so expensive for everybody right now that like one emergency can bankrupt your entire family. Like
Yeah.
one $500 emergency can destroy a family.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just want to make sure that it's accessible. And, ideally, I want it to be as low cost as possible. There are some problems with like, overcharging and this, that, and the other thing, and over medication. But until we can really fix the healthcare, we have to fix the diet, number one. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of junk food that we need to get out of there. We have to be really careful with vaccines and what we put into the bodies of our children. There's a lot of education that needs to go on, and like I said, like people need to start taking responsibility. Like there is no savior, right?
Yeah.
There's no person that is going to come, and there's no Messiah that's going to come and make everything better. And
Yes.
people need to hear truths, and truths are not comfortable, right?
Yeah.
And But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that things are accessible and things are free. That's why I said there's some things that should be free and some things that shouldn't be free
Yeah.
if we're going to live in a society that's going to move forward. Okay, like we need people to own homes, we need people to have businesses, we need people, that stuff is private,
Yeah.
but we have to have a public infrastructure that can help when people are down on down times. And I've been on down times, so I know, that people need help, and I want to give them that help as long as I can. Like for example, um, one of the things about what's happening in New York City in the zoning, which is the city of yes, like I was talking about the infrastructure, is that they
Mhm.
want to increase density. They want everybody to be able to build all over the place.
Okay.
Um, so in by doing so, they want to put a lot of low income families on Section 8 as
Mhm.
opposed to Section 9, which is something that the city had for a long time, where if you it was about home ownership. It was the ability for a low income family who could be affected systematically to be able to own their home, their apartment.
Mhm.
But now their great idea is to put people on Section 8. The thing about Section 8 that they don't tell you is that it doesn't cover the cost of the utilities as Section 9 used to.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things that is happening throughout the city. So all the low income families that need the assistance, that need to be able to access the social services, are going to be overcharged, and they're not going to be able, they're not going to realize that they're not going to have the money to pay for the utilities in the next coming years. And we're not talking about a few $100s. I mean, we're talking about thousands of dollars a month for
Mhm.
energy and electricity and all of that stuff. So I
Mhm.
want to make sure that that stuff is known and remains accessible.
Yeah. So what you said about diet, I feel like personally, like across US, there needs to be more education in terms of diet. I mean, I recently had skin issues and I went to my dermatologist. It didn't work. I mean, in fact, it ruined my skin. And then I went for like natural remedies, and that like really house remedies, and that kind of like worked quite a bit. So I feel like the culture is to go for medications. You don't need that much medications or going to the doctor. You need to figure out some natural ways, and even that. I mean, I'm a big proponent of having a proper diet. So that's something that I feel like somebody should educate the entire country on it in some form. Anyways, going back to education, right? What are your stands on education within your district, and how would you want to? And that's something which I think is a sore subject across America, right? Where we are constantly looking at our public schools. So, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I went to all the public schools in the district.
Mhm.
So, I have a good idea of what public schools are. I think that the public schools and the Department of Education shouldn't have a monopoly on education.
Mhm.
There's a large community of homeschooled people, there's a large community of religious instruction. So, the thing about public education, and, my kids are in school and I have daughters, and they're not always on time because they're girls, and God forbid a hair is out of place in the morning. They don't, it takes them about an hour just to get out the house, right? But
Yeah,
you know the the schools get pretty much paid by the attendance,
yeah.
right? So that's really what they care about. So I just want the monopoly of education to be decentralized. I want the ability to put children in more in religious instruction.
Mhm.
If they wanted to, I wanted to give the people the ability to homeschool if they want to, and just
Yeah.
spread the love around. Because the problem that I have with like the community education councils and the civic associations, the community boards, and all the stuff, the local organizations that are supposed to direct, the path of education. The families and the local people that want the schools to listen to them are never listened to. Like you
Yes.
can go, like they have the Euler process where you're supposed to have hearings and meetings and you're supposed to listen to what people say, but they're an exercise in futility because they never listen to what any of the parents want or say. So
Yeah.
if they're going to just put their agendas, that's already decided without input of the parents, then that's really the issue. So let's decentralize it, and let's give a little bit more competition and spread the wealth around, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, totally agree. So we are in a very polarized world, as and you mentioned earlier, like everybody goes to the federal level, and you're like, no, this is local politics, and this is very different from what is happening at the Fed, right? So, so how do you plan to address this within your district and achieve and work in a fashion where it's bipartisan and achieve results if you got elected?
See, the issue that why it's so complicated, because this is Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, right? This is not like what you are reacting to, right? It's not really what is going on, like. And what happens is it's very easy to be manipulated by the media, and it's very easy to just react to things that are going on.
Mhm.
Like one of the things about like the immigration that is going on throughout New York City and the district and everything like that is that we're not against immigration. We're not against families. My family immigrants. My children's mother is an immigrant. It's not about
Yeah,
immigration, but when you try to explain that, there's groups of people that were brought here on purpose to
yeah,
overload our welfare system, to make things difficult for us, we have to stop getting so much in our feelings where our entire reaction is to just feel sorry for people, when in reality we have to understand that there's a geographic, economic, political system that is overburdening us on purpose. We are being they're being weaponized, and it's something that is just a little too nuanced. It's a little too complicated for people to understand, and
yeah,
that's just one example of things that is going on. Like, for example, we have the Israel-Palestinian issue. My district is a lot of Jews
yeah,
in the district, and um, the stuff that's going on in the Middle East, like, it's terrible. Like, there is no right or wrong way to address it. It's just a terrible, terrible situation, and people are being killed. And I'm Jewish. Believe me, I'm supposed to be on one side of the aisle, but again,
yeah,
it's not so simple. Like, they're making us fight with each other on purpose for instability and to create a civil war within our country. But again, it's so hard to have that conversation.
yeah,
So I really just try to focus on just local issues,
yeah,
because it just, you can't start getting into the weeds,
yeah,
because it's either you're on this side or you're on that side,
yeah, yeah.
and it's just not that simple.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to be in politics in today's world. It's just very, very hard. I definitely think so. Um, so, so as you're looking at your district, obviously you have grown up there. You have thought about the challenges and the opportunities in the next 5 years, and what, according to you, are the challenges and the opportunities which you see in the district and which could like make the district better?
Um, Listen, we have to have the ability to have children and raise a family,
Yeah,
right? We have to obviously be able to respect everyone. Everybody does respect everyone.
yeah,
Um, and we have to have the ability for people to, after you have a child and you get out of school, you need jobs for them.
yeah,
And you have to make it a little easy for people to travel and people to get around.
yeah,
And I'm not for centralization, right? I don't want the Internet of Things, right? Like, for example, you have your kitchen and you have your refrigerator and your dishwasher and your microwave and all that stuff talking to each other, and centralizing all the information through AI. Like, if you make one mistake and then everything is flagged, and then you can't use your debit card, or you can't go to the library because you missed an Easy Pass bill, or I don't want that system. So I just want to make it so that we are as decentralized as possible to
yeah,
because the AI and the singularity and all the accessible data is inevitable. I just
Yes.
want to make that as far out into the future as we possibly can. And that's really, a very difficult challenge. I just want my kids and I want my grandkids to have a chance, and I
Yeah.
want them to have children.
So you would hate me professionally because I I actually do AI transformation for my job. So and I love it because I get to see so many things which is new and technologically very thrilling. But yeah, but yeah,
Most
I
people don't have that job, and then let me tell you, the private sector is okay, but the
understand.
public sector, I just want to do what I can to just push it as far out in the future as I
No, no,
possibly.
I hear you. I actually have two gas cars and I'm a technologist. And people ask me, I in fact even finally now installed the electric plug in my home. And people ask me, like, why I don't have an electric car? I live in the Silicon Valley, right? And my main reason is it's inconvenient for me. I can't stand 30 minutes trying to charge my car somewhere. I mean, even though I have it at home now, I don't want to do it because I want to have the convenience of a gas car, right? So and I will probably use my gas cars until 2030 or something like that, and then we'll decide what the state decides, right? So yeah, I hear you when you say sometimes excess technology can make it very inconvenient as well. um, and not everybody is willing to adopt, and there is barriers to money that you have to actually pay for people to adapt as well, right? It's not something which is cheap or so I totally get it where you're coming from. Uh, so um, so so we are talking about campaign experience, and you spoke a little bit about it where you said you had to knock every door and ask for 500 signatures, and frankly you educated me today on that. So what are some of the other experiences that you have kind of faced and you felt like, okay, this is something which is worth sharing, and how has it shaped your perspective?
Well, I'm just going to tell you my experience, right?
Yeah.
Because I for any I always tell people that want to run for office, you're not a candidate until you're on the ballot, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, I'm running for office, but they never make the ballot. They're not running for office, right? They
Yeah.
just say they're
Yes.
running for office.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is name recognition, right? Like the people that have been in office for a long, long time, you know who they are. You know their name. Like if I
Yeah.
say AOC, you know who that is.
Yeah. 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 Totally.
There- right. So there's an element of name recognition. Now, then you have to ask yourself, well, how do you get that name recognition,
Yeah.
right? And the way that you get it these days is that you have to do a lot of political stunts. You have to get your name in the paper. Um,
Yes.
but what happens is they always write bad articles about me in the paper. They especially locally. Um, I have actually I'm representative of a community, but that community doesn't even acknowledge me, and I get a lot of ridicule for the things that I do when I should be just as accepted as and my lifestyle should be just as accepted as everyone else's, but they always use that as a tool to write bad things about me in the paper. So if you're going to be in politics, you have to get name recognition, and there's no such thing as bad publicity. So if you think that you're going to just come in there dressed in a suit and tie, look like everybody else, and talk the same way that everybody else talks, nobody's going to remember you.
Yeah.
But in order for people to remember you, they have to first hate you, and then you kind of have to kind of rebrand and,
Yes.
and let people know who you really are. But you have to make a splash in some
Yeah.
way, shape, or form, or nobody's going to know your name.
Agreed. Agreed. Totally. Or you take another approach where you do it consistently for like 30 years, which a lot of people don't have patience for, I would say. Um, so, um, so tell me a little bit about your long-term vision for the district and how do you plan to achieve it, right? And this might be very important to anybody who's hearing from you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that public service is not, uh, it's not really a career.
Yeah.
People go into public service. I get that there's a big bureaucracy. I completely understand that.
Yeah.
But public service is something that you're supposed to hate. Like I'm not going into public service so that I can have a long career and please everybody. I'm going in there because I see that there's an issue and I want people to know about it and I want to address it. And when you do stuff like that, you're not really expected to last a very, very long time because you're there to shake up the system. And I'm okay with that. Like my long-term vision for the district is to kind of break the veil of cognitive dissonance. I want people to really see what's going on in front of their face without being fooled anymore, and
Yeah.
to really understand like what it's going to take to get here and what it's going to take to get here. Um, for example, I was in Flushing Meadow Park the other day.
Okay.
Um, and Flushing Meadow Park is this park in Queens. It's right outside the district.
Hmm.
But the water is disgusting. It's dirty. It's gross. I went magnet fishing there,
Hmm.
and I would throw the magnet in there, just family stuff, and then pull it out of the water. And you can imagine the water
Yeah.
is gross. And I thought to myself, I'm like, look, they want us all to be clean energy, clean this, renewable this, renewable that. Well, then how come the park and the water is so disgusting? Like, so, long term for the district, I want it to be clean. I want the water to be clean. I want the parks to be clean. And I want to upgrade the parks. My son went to school, played Little League in Forest Hills for many, many years. There's abandoned tracks over there. Like, why not make a High Line in Forest Hills? Add some property value, but at the same time, make legislation so that they don't increase the taxes on the homeowners. Like, just do upgrades to the neighborhood, and make sure that it's safe.
Yeah.
There's a young girl was almost attacked and abducted in Forest Park by where I live. So, these are beautiful trails. These are old parks, maintained beautifully by the Parks Department that we all access. So, make sure that the neighborhood is safe for the families, and make sure that our parks and our waters and that stuff is clean
Yeah.
and will remain clean.
Agreed. Agreed. So, any book or mentor that has inspired you over the years?
I mean, I think obviously the classic 1984 by George Orwell, I think everybody should read,
Yeah.
um, because, I mean, that's kind of just a history book,
Yeah.
right?
I
Like,
actually love Orwell. He's one of my favorite authors as well. He
yeah,
thinks
I
very
mean,
differently.
yeah, I
Growing.
mean,
Yeah.
I think that everybody should read Orwell.
Yeah.
Um, but, it's really just understanding the administrative process. Like, people just have to learn how to write emails, show up to their local elected official's office. They need to know, be confident within themselves. They need to be taught to not hate, the birthright and the country that we live in, because it gives us a lot of power. Our
Yeah.
power is from the bottom up, not the top down, right? Like, our power comes locally. Our
Yeah.
power is local. The federal government, the president, they really have no power over you. It's
Yeah.
local. You have a say about what happens in your neighborhood, and it doesn't matter what anybody says. It's your neighborhood. You have a right to teach your kids what you want. You have a right to do whatever you want with your body, put whatever you want in your body. You have the right to do whatever you want locally, and that's kind not really more of an education, but it's a mindset, it's an ideology, but always read the classics to kind of give you an idea of what it would look like if we don't
Yeah.
realize the potential.
There's a lot to learn from history. That's what I say, or as you said, to the classics. So, any closing remark or message to your district?
I want you, all I want to say is this for the district is that regardless of who you think I am or what I am or where I come from, just
Yeah.
know that I will always represent and fight for our families, for our ability to own a home, for our ability to work, and for our ability to just have a community, because obviously they're not listening to you. Obviously, things are happening in the neighborhood that you don't want, but it happens anyways. Anytime you have a problem, the elected officials are not accessible, they're not available. Every time you go to a meeting, they won't let you speak, they will always cut you off.
Yeah.
So, really vote for someone that will not back down to the establishment, and deep down in your heart that I will fight for you with every single ounce that I have in my body
Yeah.
without selling out to special interests.
All right, Jonathan, this was a great interview, and I really enjoyed hearing about your views. And thank you so much for coming on Maker's Bar.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah.